Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone is having a pleasant holiday season. Um, had a great Christmas, great Hanukkah. Um, I I'm doing this stream for the purpose of soliciting questions for the live stream that's coming up tomorrow morning at 10:30 Central, at 8:30 Pacific, with Jordan Daniel Wood, where Luke and I are going to have Jordan Daniel Wood come in to answer questions from people who have disagreements with universalism, with the kind of universalism that we all uh, mostly share in common. We all kind of subscribe to the same sort of uh, McDonaldian sort of universalism. That's one of the things about universalism, is that it actually comes in multiple forms, and sometimes the version of universalism that's objected to is that the objector has in mind is different from what's actually held. Uh, hey, Mason, welcome. Stephen, welcome. Oh, glad you already gave some questions to Luke. So yeah, I'm kind of gonna wait for. I'm actually going to put the link. If you have a question, I'm going to invite you to come into the stream and share your question with me. And then actually, so I have a written copy of the question that I can use for tomorrow's stream. I would appreciate if you could also send the question that you share on stream to the Grail Country email box, so that I have a written form of it to access later. And then we'll go. I want to kind of like go through them, and the ones that I think that I determine are like the very best questions, like the ones that I would say, okay, this would give me some difficulty to answer. This is a very good question. There's something meaningful here. Then we can extend an invite for those people to potentially come on stream and ask the question directly of Jordan if you're available. If not, if it's a good question, then I'll share it. So let me go ahead and drop the link, and then I'm just going to, while I'm waiting for someone to come in and formulate a question, I'll just read something. This is actually what I chose to read is it's a copy of Thomas Merton's essay, The Moral Theology of the Devil, that was posted by Father Aidan Kemmel on his Universalism blog in February of 2021 originally. But it's the original text as written by Merton. The attribution is by Thomas Merton. So this is actually Merton's original essay. I'm gonna just kind of like read a couple of paragraphs and then take a drink of water, take a breath, and check to see what's going on in the stream, and see if anybody's ready to come on with a question yet. And also, if you don't want to come on, if you think you have a really good question, you prefer not to come on to the stream, just drop it in the chat, and then I should be able to save the. I don't know if I'll be able to. There's got to be a way to save the comment. I'll maybe just copy and paste it into a notepad document from the comments. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for some questions to be generated, which I'm not going to attempt to answer, by the way, I'm going to save that for the live stream tomorrow with Jordan. In the meantime, I'm going to just read a little bit from the Merton essay. So this is called The Moral Theology of the Devil. The devil has a whole system of theology and philosophy, which will explain to anyone who will listen that created things are evil, that men are evil, that God created evil, and that he directly wills that men should suffer evil. According to the devil, God rejoices in the suffering of men, and in fact, the whole universe is full of misery because God has willed and planned it that way. Indeed, says this system of theology, God, that Father, took real pleasure in delivering his Son to his murderers. And God the Son came to earth because he wanted to be punished by the Father. Both of them together seek nothing more than to punish and persecute their faithful ones. As a matter of fact, in creating the world, God had clearly in mind that man would inevitably sin, as it was almost as if the world were created in order that man might sin, so that God would have an opportunity to manifest his justice. All right. Um, so I'm going to take a breath, take a drink of sip of water. It doesn't seem like there's anyone who's come up with a question yet, so I'll go back to reading from Merton. So, according to the devil, the first thing created was really hell. If everything else were in some sense for the sake of, as if everything else were in some sense for the sake of hell. Therefore, the devotional life of all those who are faithful to this kind of theology consists above all in an obsession with evil. As if there were not already enough evils in the world, they multiply prohibitions and make new rules, binding everything with thorns, so that man may not escape evil and punishment. For they would have him bleed from morning to night, though even with so much blood, there is no remission of sin. The cross, then, is no longer a sign of mercy, for mercy has no place in such a theology. It is a sign that law and justice have utterly triumphed, as if Christ had said, I came not to destroy the law, but to be destroyed by it. For this, according to the devil, is the only way in which the law could really and truly be fulfilled. Not love, but punishment is the fulfillment of the law. The law must devour everything, even God. Such is the theology of punishment, hatred, and revenge. He who would live by such a dogma must rejoice in punishment. He may indeed successfully evade punishment himself by playing ball with the law and the lawgiver, but he must take good care that others do not avoid suffering. He must occupy his mind with their present and future punishment. The law must triumph. There must be no mercy. This is the chief mark of the theology of hell. For in hell, there is everything but mercy. That is why God himself is absent from hell. Mercy is the manifestation of his presence. The theology of the devil, for those who, for one reason or another, whether because they are perfect or because they have come to an agreement with the law, no longer need any mercy, with them, O grim joy, God is satisfied. So too is the devil. It is quite an achievement to please everybody. All right, let's see. We've got some action here, it looks like. All right, we have from Shoulder Surf. Is hell a place where people can stay if they prefer it to heaven? I'm thinking of the spirits that went back to the gray town. So you're thinking like in the context of the Great Divorce. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Lewis's portrayal in the Great Divorce is quite intriguing because it seems to be um, more. Oh, I can't actually copy and paste here. But you know what I can do is I can use my snipping tool to capture it directly from the screen here. I'll do that. All right, so I am capturing your question here. And then I'm going to save it. Where'd it go? All right, there's the save button. I think the Windows 11 changed the UI for the snipping tool. And all right, I'm just going to save these all to the desktop for now. We'll call this question 1. And I started to do the thing I said I wasn't going to do. So I do find out that's an intriguing question. It brings up a lot of interesting things. Without actually answering the question, I do think what's interesting about Lewis's portrayal is that it seems more of a purgatorial um, place than it is like than a place of absolute perdition. So that's interesting. Let's see here. And then shoulder self here is continuing. Okay. Yeah, that's another aspect where it kind of transitions from being purgatorial to being an actual that it's destined eventually to become a location of perdition, which is very interesting because there's no like it's really weird because there's no actual history of Christian doctrine that actually looks at it the way that Lewis does. But um, even though I'm a universalist, I do find that Lewis's imagination to be pretty amazing, and I like the book. I do not like the words that he puts into McDonald's mouth, but which is one of the weakest things he ever wrote. But I still like the book, and I still like Lewis. All right, let's see here. Chris Howard, in John chapter 3, Jesus refers to an incident where Moses lifts up the serpent for the people to look at and be saved. In the Moses case, what kind of people could possibly have not looked and lived? This is interesting. So you kind of that's a good question too. See, you guys are so glad I did this. You guys are full of great questions. Let me just grab that one too. All right. I did drop the link back if somebody wants to come on with their question and come on screen. It's totally fine. I wouldn't mind the company. All right. That one's saved too. All right. Looks like I'm caught up with the chat. So that said, let me see if I can find my spot in the Merton essay. Okay. So the last line of the essay that I read was, so too is the devil. It is quite an achievement to please everybody. Next paragraph. The people who listen to this sort of thing and absorb it and enjoy it develop a notion of the spiritual life, which is a kind of hypnosis of evil. The concepts of sin, suffering, damnation, punishment, the justice of God, retribution, the end of the world, and so on, are things over which they smack their lips with unspeakable pleasure. Perhaps this is because they derive a deep subconscious comfort in the thought that many other people will fall into the hell which they themselves are going to escape. And how do they know they are going to escape it? They cannot give any definite reason except for the fact that they feel a certain sense of relief at the thought that all this punishment is prepared for practically everyone but themselves. This feeling of complacency is what they refer to as faith. And it constitutes a kind of conviction that they are saved. The devil makes many disciples by preaching against sin. He convinces them of the great evil of sin, induces a crisis of guilt by which God is satisfied, and after that, he lets them spend the rest of their lives meditating in the intense sinfulness and evident reprobation of other men. The moral theology of the devil starts out with the principle pleasure is sin. Then he goes to work on it the other way. All sin is pleasure. After that, he points out that pleasure is practically unavoidable and that we all have a natural tendency to do things that please us, from which he reasons that all of our natural tendencies are evil and that our nature is evil in itself. And he leads us to the conclusion that no one can possibly avoid sin, since pleasure is inescapable. After that, to make sure that no one will try to escape or avoid sin, He adds that what is unavoidable cannot be a sin. Then the whole concept of sin is thrown out the window as irrelevant, and people decide that there is nothing left except to live for pleasure, and in that way, pleasures are naturally good, and in the way that pleasures are excuse me, and in that way, pleasures that are naturally good become evil by deordination, and lives are thrown away in unhappiness and sin. All right, let's see. Let's catch up with the chat here. Okay, here we go. This is from Kaido Lobo. Does the persistence of infernalism mean that there is something inherently problematic with Christianity? Should we pay credence to an authority that would enforce such a doctrine? So, Kaido, that's a great question, but this live stream it is focused on trying to answer objections to universalism from people who hold the contrary position. So great question, but it doesn't quite suit the needs of what we're looking for here. I would say this. Here's an interesting thing. Actually, I don't remember who I was talking to you, but this is an interesting thing. Actually, I was thinking about this in the context of Paul Vanderkooy talking about eternal conscious torment. And Paul said that it's a polemic, but it's actually not a polemic at all. The reason that the term eternal conscious torment exists is to distinguish a particular species of belief in ultimate perdition that insist upon the necessity of it being embodied and physical, and therefore literally in eternal conscious torments. This is actually the most traditional view. It is the view advocated by Thomas Aquinas in the Summa. He defends this view. He thinks it's the only possible view. And almost no one actually, now the reason Paul feels that it's a polemic is that apparently if people are in fact using eternal conscious torment to say that it's a one-to-one, like a belief in some sort of perdition is a one-to-one with eternal conscious torment, that is in fact a polemical use, and it's strawmanning other forms of rejection of universalism. And in Paul's case, I don't think anyone actually thinks Paul believes in eternal conscious torment, so I can see why he's objecting to that. But I don't think that like anyone's actually accusing him of believing in eternal conscious torment. I certainly am not. And actually, almost here's the interesting thing, though, about in the historical arc of this. It's like this used to be universally the version of perdition that was accepted by the church. It was the dominant position. And now we live in a time where, other than a few weirdo Thomists, trad Catholic Thomists, no one defends this. No one thinks this. So that means that the kind of the arc of history and the development of doctrine has clearly moved the needle toward in the universalist direction, realizing that at the very least, like the most traditional forms of perdition needed some sort of mitigation, and that almost no one has the stomach to believe them anymore. So hey, Tayo, welcome, my friend. Let me just catch up with what's going on in the chat here first, and then I'd be glad to hear what you have to say.
Please.
All right, let's see. Happy New Year to you as well. Okay. Well, let's see this one. Oh, is the group? Oh, okay, cool. Let me capture that and add that one then, and I'll put it question 1 part A. All right. All right, grab that. And then save. Question 1, part A, or part 2, we'll say. All right. Tayo, I'm all caught up on the chat. What's going on, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I think
Hello?
you started.
Oh, you were lagging.
Am I still lagging?
I'm getting I'm getting that kind of like robot voice effect. So I don't know if it's my connection that's
I'm
bad
sure.
or if it's yours.
I'm sure the
You
chat
can
will let us know.
try turn like what you can do is like I will still try turning your if it let's try turning your
Mm,
camera off and see if only if it'll work and then I can still hear you. All
Mic
right,
check 1 2. How do
try
I
now,
sound?
Tayo.
What about now? How do I sound?
Yeah, it's clearer. Yeah, it's better. It's not robot
Yeah.
voicing anymore.
Okay, that's good. Uh, yeah, I
Yeah.
was saying. I
So
think
what's up?
you sort of started answering the question I was trying to formulate. Before you
Okay.
went on the live stream because, and I still don't know exactly how to formulate the question, which is why I came on, and maybe you can help me do that.
Oh,
It's
absolutely. Let's work it out together. Yeah.
because I don't know if it's actually so much of an objection to to the truth of universalism as so much as an objection to the um, proselytizing of universalism. Something like that, I think, is what I'm trying to get at, and it's sort of similar to I think it's Peugeot that talks about um, the importance of secrets, shall we say, and the importance of
What
not
secret did you say?
the importance of secrets.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
So
So your question is kind of related to like the okay, it's not about like whether universalism is true, but your question is this. And actually I think this is a good question because it's still about like it's still a question about the nature of universalism. So it sounds like your question is something like even if universalism is true, is it spiritually wise to proclaim it?
yes,
Something like that.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
That's a
something like that.
That's a great question. That's actually a really, really, really great question. And I actually have mixed feelings about it myself. So it'll be interesting to see what Jordan says. I'm just gonna write this down. Um, universalism is true. Is it spiritually wise to proclaim? Yeah, that's a totally appropriate question. That's really good. That's really good because it does like for those who have a very confident universalism, it asks for them to explain their position. So, no, that's a great question. Let me just
Thank
catch up on the chat here. Let's see. We got looks like we have logistical question from to which thread of the Grail Country Discord should we share links and sources related to Bulgakov, objections to universalism, etc. There is a theological Thunderdome, I think, is what John Slakarius kind of runs the Grill Country Discord. I think there's a channel in there that's called Theological Thunderdome. That seems like the place to do it, but I am a Christian anarchist, so I kind of just like um, I John's always on me for never respecting his channels and just saying what I want in whatever channel. So I would just say if you want it to if you it's something that you want to tag, I would say just go ahead and tag me when you drop it if it's something that you wanted to include for the Q&A, and we'll make sure it gets in there. All right, and also your generosity is as always is amazing. Let's see here. Uh, uh, let's see. Okay, here we go. This is from Kaido. How about the argument from Aquinas that all sins insult God's infinite honor and so merit infinite punishment? I'd like to know how Jordan first this. Okay, great, perfect. I will ask that. Let me just capture that. Save. Question 3. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see here. All right. Chris Howard. If it turns out God is not a universalist, are you going to take the moral high ground and insist on going to hell?
That's such a great trollish question.
That is a really, really good question, and I'm going to resist the temptation to answer it on stream and save it. And save. Question 4. All right. All right. Let's see here. Muslims preserve the Greek. What was that?
I was just highlighting a different comment. Go for it.
The Muslims preserved the Greek canon and Hermetic canon along with the scientific method through the cosmology. Okay, that's actually just more of a comment. All right. Let's see here. Can people repent after death? That is a really good question. And actually, I think that one is short enough. I'm just going to add it to my notepad. It's actually interesting. This actually leads us to our to the first question that we got, right, where the person was asking about the gray town and Lewis's great divorce, because clearly Lewis is clearly coming down on the yes side of that. So this is one of the reasons that I still like the great divorce, because there's like I actually describe Lewis's position as a pessimistic universalism. But he does hold open the possibility of post-mortem repentance and the great divorce. So he's at least seeing that potential problems with a full embrace of perdition unqualified.
And when you say pessimistic universalism, is the pessimism there the fact that Lewis seems to imply that some people will choose not to accept the invitation to the feast?
He leaves it open. He actually doesn't come down and say, but he doesn't want to foreclose the possibility, right? So he wants to, and that's why there's a pessimism. There's the pessimism there. Like a hopeful universalist is actively praying for the salvation of all and believes it can't be done or can be done. Like the reason I call Lewis a pessimistic universalist is that he just wants to. He's kind of even-handed about like not wanting to foreclose either possibility, and so there's a way in which Lewis's position is real. I don't want to strawman it at all because it's actually a really sophisticated, well thought out position. I think that like what he essentially has McDonald critique, I don't think McDonald actually does. What Lewis is objecting to is the proclamation of universalism as like an absolute like rational certainty, which I think that David Bentley Hart, as much as I love him, I do think that David can lean in that direction sometimes. And even his own brother Addison, like, thinks it's he thinks that David does it for rhetorical effect, basically, and that if you really, really, really press David, that his real position is something more like a hopeful universalism, even though he publicly expresses um, a kind of very rational, confident universalism. So,
I don't know much about DBH, but
right.
from what I've seen, it seems pretty confident, and I
Yeah,
don't think
very, very, very much so.
obviously.
Yeah. But
Um,
his brother thinks that, like, the David that is revealed to him in private, intimate conversations between siblings is not as firm in that as he seems, and that the reason he does that is because his opponents tend to strawman his argument so badly. He will always wants to assert it in the strongest possible rational form, and so he doesn't actually want to he doesn't want to nuance it for that reason, because he actually thinks that it leads to better clarity by him just holding firm
yeah.
on it.
Okay, so that's interesting because when I came on stream, I said I thought you were answering the question that you helped me to formulate, and part of that was the way you were describing the uh, theological development around hell and in the church, and your
Yeah,
sort of your
there's no
insertion.
doubt that there's definitely no doubt that there's been theological development up on this over time. And, like, one of the things universalists will point out to you consistently is that, like, I mean, the Cappadocian fathers are, frankly, they're all universalists, and it's pretty evidently so. And, like, the Cappadocian fathers are like the foundations of Trinitarian theology. So there's kind of an early there was an early consensus within the church, um, prior to um, prior to the early fourth century, that was universalist. That was the broadest. It's not that there weren't other opinions, but universalism was the most widespread, particularly amongst, like, the monastics and the clergy and the influential people. And then it's only in the early fourth century we start seeing the insistence on absolute perdition being kind of starting to gain momentum. And I think I have definite views as to why this is the case.
I'm very
Um,
curious as to
they're very Protestant reasons, in one sense,
the
because
language.
it's like I'm not of the Constantine made everything better um, opinion. I think it is the intermingling of Christianity with the mechanisms of power caused Christianity to internalize an idolatry of power that that caused the perversion of it. And that's why, and actually, that's why the earliest versions of it are the most extreme, right? Because that's when, like, it begins as a theological movement, like in the early fourth century, as Christianity is becoming entangled with worldly power more, and it's and part of that is because of its entanglement with worldly power. It loses sight of the proper relationship between justice and mercy within God, and begins to emphasize justice over mercy, and fails to be able to understand the way in which God's justice is mercy. So that means that it's actually losing it's losing touch with its own theological core, which is the love of the internal relations of the Trinity, and and the love of the Son for the Father and for the creation. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what there. But there's definitely been development, and its earliest forms are the harshest forms. We lost our stomach for that over time and started to come up with, like, for example, it's like in the early forms of the doctrine, like free will had nothing to do with it. Like there was no, like, the kind of like Lewis notion that like human will is like something so precious and dignified that God would not dare to violate it. That's not there in the early versions of it at all. So it's very much changed over time.
I'm gonna
Um,
highlight some questions that are coming in for you to.
all right. Oh, this is now that's a good one, Chris. Let me grab it. That's actually one of the when I had a little side conversation about Luke and this in one of like the little I did voice chat groups. It was a text message that I left, but um I had formulated it slightly differently, but I was essentially asking the same. I was essentially presenting the same argument, and that is, in fact, like one of the reasons that people find comfort in these doctrines. Um, it's very much a straw man to pretend that everyone who holds these positions is like um, the kind of like self-righteous, self-assured person that Merton is talking about in the essay that I've been reading. That does some people that hold to it that is accurate for it, but there are also people who are have been terribly victimized that do not want to give up on some notion of ultimate justice balancing the scales for what has been done to them. And I mean, I, it's hard not to have sympathy for that, but at the same time, um, this is where Girard becomes important, right? Because it doesn't that does nothing to end the cycle. That ultimately does nothing to end the cycle of violence. It just perpetuates it. It would bring the cycle of violence back into the next age. Um, and it is only the forgiving victim that can end the cycle. So, as hard as it is, what being a Christian calls that victim to do is to somehow find a way to forgive what was done to them. And yeah, that's all I can say about it. I did a thing I said I wasn't going to do, but I'm sure Jordan will have a very different answer. But I do find that a particularly powerful question. So
I think that's the question behind McMull's "Only the universalist shall be saved." If I understand what he's trying to get at with that meme, which is if you're not willing to forgive someone that's wronged you in the most unforgivable way, you might not make it. And
right, right.
or you
Okay.
and there's another one there
Where are we
from
at here?
Escape.
Okay, can you bring it up?
Yep, it's up.
Oh, okay. How it interprets the classical passages of the New Testament. Oh, okay, like just a generic exegetical question. That's a good idea. I'm just going to put that on my notepad, and what I'm going to describe that as is um, basic exegetical questions. So here's what I'm not going to fully answer that question, but essentially, I will see what Jordan says. But to me, it's pretty plain. It's interesting because this is where Lewis, again, brilliant. Lewis realizes that St. Paul is a universalist. Like, he doesn't argue against it. He realizes like that it's just very, very clear from the Pauline corpus that Paul is a universalist. So he doesn't deny that. What Lewis does is that Lewis decides that for him, the words of Christ in the Gospels carry more weight, which is a little bit of an odd thing to do because scripture is script. I always thought scripture was scripture, but I get it. Like, and it's like, well, are there, and here's the other, and then it's like, then it becomes a matter of like context. So essentially, what I would say is that you have a contradiction, and you can try to you can arrive at a synthesis of the apparent contradiction in a couple of different ways, and one way doesn't kind of resolves everything, and the other way leaves you with more contradictions. On my view, let's see how similar Jordan's approach is to that one. So
Matsy, just for your information, it would like to know whether it's a question for Jordan Wade or for the
yes,
universal.
that is what we're doing, Matt. Yeah.
I think those are all the questions for now.
All right. Thank you.
Most
Oh,
important.
there's. How's things up? I'm recovering from a little bout of bronchitis right now, but in terms of my big picture health stuff, I had the surgery to remove my right kidney on the 27th of November. The surgery was successful. I they the report came back that they considered it a stage 2 cancer that was removed. They think that it appears that it was mostly contained by the renal membrane. So there's a membrane around the kidney that kind of protects it, and so essentially that the cancer didn't really go outside of the membrane. It was quite large though. It was 13 centimeter diameter tumor,
Oh
and
wow.
there was some stickiness to the liver. So they rate my chances of a recurrence within 5 years at basically 50-50, but they're not recommending immunotherapy because the potential benefits are not outweighed by the potential side effects in my particular case. I have the contact for a compounding pharmacy in Tennessee, and I am going to follow up with this compounding pharmacy in Tennessee to take appropriately low dosages of ivermectin in the chance that it will help kill any microscopic cancers that are remaining, so that it will reduce my chances of recurrence within the 5-year window. They also said that like the first 1 to 2 years is the greatest risk. So I'm going to have scans every 3 months to see where things are, and that's where I'm at. So nothing really that's impacting my day to day now. Lots of stuff. After this, I'm going to reach out to Malcolm Geit and remind him that we need to set a time. The week starting Monday the 6th is when he indicated he'd have a window to talk to me about the Grail. So I'm going to have Malcolm Geit on to talk about the Grail. I need to reach out to Esther Meek through Esther Meek. I messaged her on X. She completely was enthusiastic about coming on and talking to me. I'm going to, she asked me to reach out through her website. And because like you can email her through her website. So I'm going to do that and have Esther on sometime early this year. And I'm going to have a follow-up conversation with Jordan Hall soon. I need to reach out to Jordan and get that set up. Paul Vanderklee might participate.
Cool.
Um,
That'll be
it's going to be a continuation of the conversation we just had about the idea of the closed world. Um, so the next conversation is going to be about the Arcanum of Force, which I would say is involved in, if not the remedy, to the problem of the closed world. That's the next conversation is going to be. So I've got lots of stuff planned. I'm going to be very active with Braille Country. I'm going to focus on quality over quantity. So these might be spaced by some time. And yeah, so that's what's up.
brilliant. Awesome. I missed Slack's question, which was
I don't know. Now that one I will answer. I feel for me, I mean, I'm an old grognard, so for me, it's definitely it's first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's my go-to.
and
I just did see. I shared a link with. I shared a video for. Questing Beast just did a review of this new setting for an OSR game called Cairn. It's actually based on the Pale of Settlements. I shared the link with my wife and with Yosef. So that's intriguing me. I find that interesting.
Whiscape, I think this is a
Oh, so
clarification of
you want to specifically ask about the rich man and Lazarus passage? You want to hear? Okay. All right. That narrows it down. I will call rich man and Lazarus. All right.
I don't know if
Well,
this is also a question for Jordan or for you.
how does Maximus' view of creation provide a critique of capitalism?
The
That's
first one is this.
what does Maximus say about usury? Those are great Jordan Daniel Wood questions, but they're not specific to our topic today. I'm sure Jordan would love to answer those questions, though.
This is his justification.
Oh, Luke says he made a Google Doc of all of these.
Oh, nice.
Oh, okay. So you're telling me that I don't need to do like, hey, Luke, can you confirm that I don't need to keep my notes here? That you've already got it all in a Google Doc, or? Oh, you shared it with me. Oh, okay, cool. Do you want me to? Do you want me to? I don't need to. Okay. Okay. All right. Well then, unless there's more, questions, it sounds like Luke's got this all nailed.
Matt C's got.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I'm not going to be leading the conversation. It's going, but Jordan is really sharp, Matt. I don't think I don't like I would not put myself on a level with Jordan. Jordan's very clear, very clear reasoning, and he's got a good heart too. So um, I love that man, and I have full confidence in him. I think it's going to be kind of like Luke and I kind of taking turns sharing the questions with him, and Jordan will be the main speaker. I mean, obviously, I'll have my contributions. You can guarantee. I mean, it's not like I don't have the ability to just sit in a conversation and say nothing. So I'll have things to say. So yeah.
Can I
Just
ask
yeah. Go
Nate
ahead.
why you? I'm guessing you and Luke chose this format of Q&A to you know talk about this topic with Jordan. I mean, you could have had someone that's an anti-universalist for like a debate format. Why did you choose the format that you chose?
Oh, because I just don't. I'm not a big fan of debate formats personally. Um, I Um, I am a fan. I am a fan, however, of like really good probing questions that are like force people to like reconsider their positions. That's fantastic. Hey, Luke, actually. Hey, Luke, good to see you, my friend.
Hey, yeah, I was just popping in because I was just saying I wasn't even when I initially thought of this. So, it
This all
was
came out of the whole Rod Dreher flap, is what I mean.
yeah,
That's what caused it, right? So it's
right.
like Rod Dreher calling
And
me an idiot.
well, well, it was based off of that Cardinals comment, and then it was just a really bad Rod Dreher take, and so then I just thought I'd talk to Jordan because I think he talks about universalism really well because I feel like in the corner, since I've been in the corner for, I don't know, whatever, how long it's been, 5, 6 years now, 7. I feel like I've just had the same
Can you grab that
conversation.
one for the Google Doc? That's a really good
I
one.
will, yeah. But I just feel like I've had the same conversations over and over and over about hell. And like what I said to Jordan was I really want to start having conversations that move further up and further in rather than just like rehashing the same misconceptions over and over and over. Like it came up in a stream this morning. When people say you're a Christian universalist, very often people think that means you don't believe in hell. But then there's
Right.
just so many. So number one, that's not true. What does it
Yeah.
mean to believe in hell? Do you think
Yeah,
hell's a
and
place?
that's actually this is one of the things I talked about very early on in the stream is that like the form of universalism that you and Jordan and I all share is very much a form of universalism that does not deny the existence of hell, and that we would have as much problem with a universalism that denies the existence of hell altogether as anyone else.
Yeah. Well, and then I mean, it just gets into so many questions that get complicated because it's just like, what does it mean for hell to exist? Is it a place? What
Right.
does it mean for something to be real? Like, there's a lot of,
Did we
you know,
get that question, by the way? Because
I'm getting it.
that's a really good fundamental question that like is hell a place? I think it's a very simple but
Yep.
important question.
Okay, Luke, what do you mean by wanting to have conversation that goes further up or further in? I don't, as it relates to
Um,
universalism.
so yeah, I think um, at least I'm interested in having conversations that don't just retread the same ground all the time because I guess part of it is I think one of the things I'm often talking about is that I think people are all talking about the same thing, but we get stuck in language and we get stuck in ideologies, and then that's where the miscommunication comes in and the misconceptions because where you're getting stuck on particular aspects of semantics rather than. And that's where the straw manning versus the steel manning comes, where it's just like people think, oh, well, you don't believe in justice, or you don't think people get what they deserve, and like there's just subtle implications with all of that. It's just
What
like, do
I
you
took you
think?
to mean, Luke, and tell me if I'm maybe I'm totally off base. What I took you to mean is that what your primary hope for this would be not to have the sort of just like the knee jerk reaction to
Yes,
universalism. It's like you're not demanding that anybody agree with you and be a universalist. What you want is for them to not consider it as a theological option that is just completely off the table and not worthy of consideration at all.
right.
It is actually a serious part of the tradition too, and needs to be engaged with as much as the alternative.
Right. Well, and then people will say, like every in TLC, people are always saying, well, we don't want to be dogmatic about Christian universalism because of the necessary utilitarian ramifications that could affect. But what
Right.
about infernalism? Can we be dogmatic about infernalism?
That's what I'm
People are
saying. Yeah, it's
perfectly
always
okay with that
right because
forever.
no one has any problem with that. There's no knee jerk reaction against
Which just, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. It feels like
it.
Cal often will say, it's mystery for me, but not for thee. Or it's like, I can just people want to put down Christian universalism or say that we shouldn't be dogmatic about it. I'm not saying, I mean, I've never been dogmatic about it. I'm very convinced about it. I'm convicted about it, but I've never been an ideological colonialist.
This is interesting for Matt here. It's more of a statement than a question, but I think that like we believe in
Yeah.
a loving hell is basically right, which has not been explained well.
Then I guess the question would be, what does
I
it
don't
mean
know
to
if you mean
believe
like
in
by us or just like the history of it's being explained as an idea is not very good. It's interesting. Like one of the infernalists, and that is a political term. I'm sorry, but it's very convenient. There are so many different versions of belief in some sort of ultimate perdition that it's just nice to have a single word that captures all the possible iterations. And everybody calls universe like mixes all the universalists together under the umbrella of universalism. So it's really just doing the same thing. So I'm not doing it as a negative label of anyone, just to try to accurately describe their position. But there's an infernalist who Jordan gets caught up with arguing on X a lot, who is a Dominican, I believe. And he's very interesting because he's like taken the whole very modern Lewis free will kind of approach to things. And essentially, his version of hell is that hell is still loving, but that for the completely reprobate, hell is the best that God can do for them. Which is interesting. I think he's wrong ultimately, but at least that is more in it. At least he's thinking. At least he's thinking. He's thinking about it. Jordan's major problem is, here's the thing, Jordan's major issue with him is his emphasis on free will, which I think would probably be your major problem with him too. But I actually kind of agree. I'm inclined to agree with him about the free will piece. And my issue is with the it's the best God can do portion of it.
Yeah, well, I would have problems with that. And then it's also my thing with the free will has always been like, I don't know how it would correspond to God being love and good and all of the exemplars that we put on God, all these descriptors that we put on God, to willingly create persons, human beings who can willingly choose against their own good for an unending duration of time. I mean,
Right.
that just seems unequivocally not
Well,
good.
that's the other thing about it too, is like that's why the asking the hell is hell a place question that's a good question, right? I think have we got that question yet? Because to me, it's like,
Is hell a good place? I
well,
mean, Matt
no,
C.
no,
has
no,
talked.
no, no. But like, what do we mean by eternal hell?
Well, right.
Is
Yeah.
just like a very fundamental question. So it's like, as you know, Luke, like and this is true of Jordan too. So it'd be a good question to form. I don't know exactly how to formulate the question. Maybe you can help me figure out how to ask it as a question. But getting to that issue of what exactly do we mean by eternal hell is super important because, like Jordan, I actually have no problem affirming the traditional Catholic dogma of eternal hell. I just don't think that eternal hell is a infinite series continued through an extended infinite time. That's
Right.
not what eternity is.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean,
But
that's
when
what I've
you
been talking about
suffer
mainly.
hell, it has an internal. When you suffer hell, it has an eternal characteristic to it.
You're talking about like eternal
There's
hell
no
is like in a Tom Berg kind of existential way.
Well, that opens you up to like. So one of the more interesting positions since we have Matt in here and he's being nice to me, one of the better arguments from the Calvinist world comes from like Plantinga has this notion that like the reason that hell is eternal is because essentially God's person making activity doesn't ever end. But there's no individual person who is confined to hell for eternity. Everyone eventually gets out of hell, but because the person making process never ends either, it's always populated, so there's no possibility of hell ever being empty, which means that you also have to have a sort of epic static notion of the eschaton as well. You can see Lewis's influence there too.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you grabbed them, but there were a couple more questions or one from John.
Okay. I can't grab them I can't like copy them in StreamYard, so I have to go to YouTube to copy them. It's a pain in the butt.
yeah, I couldn't copy them either. That's why I was just using the snipping tool to just like take snippets and save them to my desktop.
Yeah.
But since you've captured them already, I'm good. That's fine. That's interesting. Yeah, Jordan definitely has like this idea of really essentially like the undoing of things. Uh, which is again related to like there's a way in which you're conceiving of you're not conceiving some kind of connection to linear time, and and which it doesn't when you're talking about when you're talking about eschatology and divine things, it doesn't make any sense to use to allow the frame of linear time to confuse your thinking on it.
Can I just flesh out something for
Yeah.
Because from both of you, I heard two different things. From you, Nate, I heard you saying sort of we just want this to be known as an option that's not just a fringe option. It's got a traditional
A long and rich history, yeah.
yeah. And then Luke, I don't know if that's what you're saying. And if I'm not getting you correctly, then please correct me. It sounds more like it's because the people that are objection. Okay, let me reframe this. Prior to Nate, this stream by Nate, Luke's first two streams sounded to me like Luke was gonna deal with the objections to universalism, and then have the conversation about why universalism with Jordan Daniel Wood. And then when I saw Nate was actually taking the objections and collecting them, and I saw that you were doing it, and it's just like, okay, maybe it's a different thing to what I thought it was. But then
Well,
when
it's kind of evolved
It's
because
all because of what Jordan's input was.
okay,
Yeah.
so I was initially just going to have a conversation with Jordan. I didn't know if Nate was going to want to be involved, and I was just thinking I would talk to him and then open up a live stream where people could come on if they wanted, and we could actively live engage the comments and the questions, because I mean that's part of the TLC thing too. Is I think when I find out almost inevitably when you're just dealing in text and responding to a text-based question, people feel like they are not adequately represented in the engagement. And so that's why I really like to have the live face-to-face conversations, because it's really hard to mischaracterize someone when you're actively talking to them in a video conversation. And just because I think it's such a and I just like to promote the idea of universalism because it's been so enlivening to me and good to me. And I often think the things that it's kind of like, tell me about the God you don't believe in. I probably don't believe in him either. It's like, tell me about the Christian universalism you don't believe in. That's probably not what I'm talking about.
Right.
okay.
You know?
There was the same person who asked that like had some exegetical questions earlier who wanted to ask about the rich man and Lazarus also would like to ask about the parable of the sheep and the goats. Get Jordan's exegesis on that.
Okay, I'll throw that in there.
All I will say is that I'm a universalist and I love that passage. It's one of my favorite parts of the gospel.
I mean, we already have like too many things to even cover in one live stream. I mean, it's way
For sure.
too much.
Yeah. we'll have to actually, since Jordan has access, like we should just tell Jordan to flag the ones he most wants to respond to.
Yeah,
That
we can
makes
do
sense.
that. I'll
If you
message him and just tell
as
him
a
to
good
do that.
block. Yeah.
So,
Hey, Laura.
do you both consider universalism to be the? I mean, you must do surely the Orthodox Christian, uh, the Christian belief is this is what Christianity is and has always been, and it was only corrupted.
I would say this. I do consider it to be the more venerable position, and it does have a long and rich history. I don't think it's the only possible position, though. I think it's like here's what I would like. Here's what I would like. First, I'm very fairly modest in what I want, and this is pretty much when I had my conversation with Paul Vanderklay about it. Was very much where I stood. I just want an acknowledgement that it is a venerable and respectable strain within the tradition. And like other things that are pure speculation, that it really are, I mean, because it really does fall into the realm of pure speculation, that we should have tolerance for differences of opinion on those kinds of speculative matters. And the reason I say it's speculative is because you have to, it is speculative because you have what you have of it within Scripture is clearly contradictory. There's just no doubt. The text is contradictory on the issue. There's no doubt about it. Parts of the gospel seem to endorse some sort of perdition or infernalism. That's just 100% undeniably true. Also, I'm not saying that there aren't alternative exegesis to deal with it. But that kind of exegesis is inherently speculative and not certain, because we can't claim to have absolute 100% certain knowledge of the meaning of the text, and that no one else's interpretation of the meaning of the text is even worth discussing, right? We definitely can't do that. So because of the speculative nature involved in doing that kind of exegesis, what I would like is just a playing field where it's like we can like respectfully agree to disagree. Now, I think Jordan's going to be much stronger than that. I don't think Jordan's going to be anywhere near as modest in what he wants. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I have so many Calvinist friends that I just don't want to. I don't want to. You know, I'm disinclined to like want to tell anybody that your exegesis is just automatically wrong, and it couldn't possibly be right. All I can do is point to like why I don't accept it and what I see. And if you don't share that vision, then there's nothing. I don't want to try to coerce you to see what I see, but it's also unreasonable for you to expect me to unsee what I see. So this is like the Roger Eyre thing. The reason that actually I tend to avoid arguing about this altogether. I don't like it. I don't like doing it because it's such a strong moral intuition for me. It's like it's not up for debate for me. So like Rod asked his question about if, without eternal hell, why would anybody be a Christian? That's effectively what he asked. And it's like, Rod, if I thought that eternal hell was the only possible option on the table, I would not be a Christian. I couldn't accept that. There's just no way. That is not the God I see revealed in the scriptures.
Yeah, I think I would have a really
trying to force me to worship that because that's your version of God is essentially asking me to engage in idolatry.
How very Protestant of you.
No, right? So I have to fess up. There's like a lot of where I stand on this is very fundamentally very Protestant. There's a reason why why I'm an Anglican.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny how all these things work because after my live stream this morning, somebody asked me the question in there. I think it was Brian Ortiz who's maybe in here, and he was saying, if the Orthodox Church had the opposite position of you and they essentially demanded that you recant, how would you respond? And I sent that to a local deacon buddy, and he replied to me, and he said, it's kind of interesting because Maximus the Confessor, who's Jordan's specialty, like that's his whole thing, is they told him to recant the stuff that he was teaching and saying, and he wouldn't do it.
Wouldn't
And
do
he
it.
stood his conviction until he died, and then he was sainted. And so it's like I think the role of what a Christian should do, I don't think it's Protestant. I mean, Luther was doing it, and it's the spirit of Protestant. I think it's like the way I like to think about it is that Cormac McCarthy quote of like, it's himself that a coward betrays first. After that, all their betrayals come easily.
Right.
I think anybody that asks you to lie to yourself, I think the Christian response is to say no.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though. Right. Exactly. But here's the thing. Like it was right of Maximus to stand his ground, but it was wrong of the authorities to punish him. Like that's just like,
Yeah.
even if they thought he was wrong.
Right.
That's
No,
it.
I agree. I agree with that. And then back, Nate, to your other point of if my understanding was God such that he arbitrarily picks people based on nothing in themselves or gives them the capacity in and of themselves to choose against their good or for him forever, and then he punitively tortures them for an unending duration of time based off of those decisions, yeah, I can't worship that God.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's just like,
Okay.
I can't, that's not the God I see. And you can't make me see it because that doesn't look like God to me.
Well, because I mean, it's just not beautiful. It's not like the prodigal. It's not the father of the prodigal son.
Well,
And then you'll say, "Well, he came back." Well, yeah,
and
but I think
the
he's
reason I
eternally
link it
waiting.
to idolatry is that it's like that's like essentially what you're doing with that kind of God is it's just it's a projection of things that are very, very human and like maximizing them. It's essentially it is entirely based in a God of power.
Right, it's
And
power
there are
over
some
love.
people who will unapologetically, by the way, say, like, emphasize, well, God is all powerful. God Almighty is the most important aspect of God for them. Only it doesn't appear to be very important to God, given that he comes in the form of a slave and is crucified among us.
There's some really great McDonaldism that I can't remember right now. That's a play on God's power and love. It's something like his power. I don't know. It's like his power is his love or something. I can't remember what it is though.
Yeah. Well, that's the Arcanum of Force conversation that I'm getting ready to have.
But the power is, it's important that Christ could have ordered angels to come down and set up his kingdom there and then, but chose not to. That power is an important aspect of
This
it's
is
not.
where I think
This is
Stevens, what he's been saying is very important. It's possible in the quantum world where there is freedom, but in the thermodynamic world it's not possible because your choice is bound and determines you. So I don't think, I mean, those kind of counterfactuals I hate. They just drive me crazy.
Wait, sorry, I don't understand that, Luke. What did you mean by that? In a
I
world where
don't.
there's freedom, there is.
So like when Jesus, when people would say, I mean, I don't know how this works with Jesus. It gets to be really confusing to me. But if they were to say that there's like some multiverse where Jesus could have done otherwise, and then there's some like parallel universe where he did call the angels down and didn't go to the cross like that. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That wasn't what I was. That was not
no,
what I
but
was.
the invitation to accept the gospel of the kingdom of God that he was preaching could have been accepted. It was not. And it's pretty clear, like even the disciples did not understand it. So
Yeah, and
no one received the gospel of the kingdom. That's why he had to be crucified. And
yes,
and to demonstrate, like, the reason he's crucified is like this is where Girard is like so powerful. He's absolutely right, because then his crucifixion, the purpose it serves is so that we can see the principles of the world in which we live unveiled for what they are. But we still have yet to move from that to accepting the gospel of the kingdom. To me, like, that's when the parousia happens, is when we're ready to finally receive the gospel of the kingdom, because it's we are the ones delaying the arrival of the kingdom. We are the ones who are delaying the parousia because we're not ready to give up the principles of this closed world that we've created for ourselves, where we have power.
I don't disagree with that. Um,
Again, I'm engaging in speculation, and I might be
yeah,
completely wrong. And I know that what
yeah,
I'm saying is
and
not pure
that's
orthodoxy,
so.
but it's
I think
what I
Matsy mentioned earlier that you should be the one that sort of runs the conversation. I think it's because of the posture that you explained a few minutes ago, of your uh basically your Protestant nature. Of this
yeah,
is my conviction, but I also recognize that the other people will read the scriptures and might come to a different conviction, and
that's right.
they're gonna have to wrestle with that the way I'm wrestling with mine. Um, so I think that's it's. I don't want to let that get lost in what I'm about to say, which is there is all there. It does seem to me that there's a closeness to the universalist position of God, how God works, of sort of like we checked out, we figured the puzzle. Oh, it all fits. And I think one part of the beauty of Christianity is the fact that it doesn't quite fit. You're right. That contradiction about um the there are many contradictions in Scripture that are just there for you to just you're gonna have to wrestle with it. I like PVK always brings up the fact that there is both abundance of evil and goodness in the world, and it's just there.
Right.
And uh, Christian faith sort of captures that in a way better than any other story does. And I think the universalist position sort of closes that mystery in a way that I don't feel comfortable with, even though I do see the beauty that it offers.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. It's nice having you here with me. I do need to end this stream unless Luke wants to keep it going. Because I promised to hang out with my son and not to keep it. I promise to try to keep it around an hour. It's a little over an hour. We're about an hour and 20 minutes at this point. So
Thank you
thank
for
you everyone for your amazing questions. They were all very helpful and great questions. I think we're going to have an awesome live stream tomorrow. I cleared my work calendar and requested a little bit of leave in the middle of my work day so that I can participate. And really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. And I think we still have the intention of like having an open portion up the stream to give you guys a chance to come on and actively participate. But we just don't. We just want to try to keep it as organized as possible so that we can have a productive dialogue. So that's why we're doing this.
Thank you very
So,
much, Nate.
yeah, thank you, Tayo. Thank you, everyone who watched the stream. You'll see me soon. Bye bye.